Story 1 by Amy B. I was staying at my friend's place for the weekend. She was away on a trip with her family, but she had a small cat that was afraid of thunderstorms. That weekend, a bad storm was expected. Her cat, Molly, was usually very independent, always sitting alone in whichever room she felt like. The storm rolled in the day before my friend left, and it didn't let up. By Saturday, the rain was relentless. The wind howled through the trees. I had spent the night there with no issues at all. Molly seemed fine with the storm, curled up on the couch as I read a book, enjoying the peaceful solitude of my friend's house deep in the woods. That peace was broken when the phone rang. It was the home phone, something rarely used anymore. I checked, thinking maybe my friend was trying to reach me, but the caller ID read unknown number. I let it ring out, assuming it was nothing. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. Same unknown number. Again, I ignored it. But this time, after the ringing stopped, a voice came through on the answering machine. It was a quiet male voice. He only said one word, my friend's name, like he was asking if she was there. Then, after a long pause, he hung up. A chill ran down my spine. Something about the way he said it felt wrong. I texted my friend, telling her that someone had called the home phone, but she didn't respond. Maybe she was busy. Over the next few hours, the same number called 2 more times. No messages, just silence. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe some telemarketer using a weird tactic. I made myself dinner and put on a movie, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling in my chest. Later that night, I went downstairs to check on Molly. That's when I saw her. She was standing completely still at the front door, her body tense, her tail flicking slightly. But what really unnerved me was what she was looking at, the thin crack at the bottom of the door. She wasn't moving, just staring. My stomach tightened. "Molly?" I called softly. She flicked her ears but didn't look at me. I hesitated before stepping toward the door. Every step felt heavier, as if some unseen force was warning me not to get closer. My breath hitched as I pressed my eye to the peephole. The glass was fogged from the storm, making everything outside blurry, but in the dim porch light, I could just barely make out a shape. A tall shape, standing completely still. I felt paralyzed. Was it a trick of the rain? A shadow from the trees? Then, the shape moved. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. Someone was out there, just standing in the storm, not knocking, not speaking, watching. I clutched my phone, ready to call the police. But then I hesitated. What would I even say? Someone might be outside, but I can't see them clearly. Maybe it was just my imagination, warped by the storm and those strange phone calls. Trying to shake the feeling, I picked Molly up and took her upstairs with me, locking the bedroom door behind me. I told myself it was just paranoia, just the weather, just my mind playing tricks on me. Then, a half hour later, Molly jumped off the bed. She walked up to the bedroom door and sat down. And just like before, she stared at the crack under the door. My chest tightened. I swallowed hard. "Molly?" I whispered. She didn't react. She just kept staring. A creeping sense of dread crawled over me. My hands trembled as I took a step closer, then another. The closer I got, the colder the room seemed to feel. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. I crouched down. I peered under the door, and I saw feet. Someone was standing just inches from the door. I gasped and stumbled backward, my hand flying to the lock. It wasn't locked. Just as I flipped the lock shut, the person moved. I heard fast, heavy footsteps rushing down the stairs. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I barely managed to tell the dispatcher what happened. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up the rain-soaked driveway. The police searched the house. Nobody was there. No signs of forced entry. Nothing taken. Just an empty, quiet house, except for the phone. When the police checked the call logs, the number was completely untraceable, like it had never existed. The only thing we knew for sure. Whoever it was, they weren't here for me. They were looking for my friend. I still don't know if it was a coincidence that they came while she was gone, or if they had planned to break in, thinking the house would be empty. All I know is that I never found out who they were, or what they wanted, and neither did she. Story 2 by LP. It was mid-November of last year when I lost my job due to budget cuts. Luckily, I had some savings to keep me afloat while I searched for a new position. For weeks, I sat at home, endlessly scrolling through job postings, sending out applications and waiting, but no one responded. After 2 weeks of silence, frustration started creeping in. I had applied everywhere, yet not a single company got back to me. Desperate, I started looking on lesser-known job sites, ones I had never used before. That's when I found a new listing. It was a simple sales job, but the pay was good. I applied without thinking much of it. Later that day, I finally got an email back. The manager, a man named Zach, said his schedule was packed, but he wanted to interview me that night. Something about the urgency felt off, but I didn't want to question it. I needed the job. I figured showing up on such short notice would make a good impression. At 7:30 p.m., I arrived at the location Zach had sent me, a small, nondescript building with no company sign. The parking lot was empty. No lights were on inside. I double-checked the address. It was correct. Still, something wasn't right. I called the number Zach had given me. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I sat there in my car for 15 more minutes, staring at the dark building. The longer I waited, the more uneasy I felt. The job listing, the rushed interview, the abandoned location. I left. I told myself it had to be some kind of mistake, that maybe he had sent the wrong address. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just dodged something bad. When I got home, I cracked open a beer and tried to relax. The whole thing had been a waste of time, but at least I was safe in my own home, or so I thought. That night, as I lounged on the couch, I started hearing faint creaking sounds from upstairs. At first, I brushed it off. Old houses make noise, but something about it felt deliberate. Like someone was moving. I checked outside. No wind. The night was eerily still. The sound came again. A slow, careful creak. I told myself it was nothing. I turned off the TV, shut off the lights, and went upstairs to bed. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The room was pitch black. The only sound was my own breathing. Then, creak. The noise was inside my room this time. It was coming from the closet. My stomach twisted as I turned my head toward the dark shape of the closet door. It was moving, sliding open. A shadow shifted in the darkness. Someone was there, watching me. For a moment, I was frozen in place, my mind trying to convince me I was dreaming. But then, the figure leaned out. My body jolted into motion. I grabbed my phone and bolted out of bed, throwing myself toward the door. The figure didn't move, just stood there staring. I ran. I didn't stop until I was outside, standing in my yard with 911 on the line. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I couldn't take my eyes off the house. I never saw them come down the stairs. The cops arrived minutes later. They searched the house, and when they reached my bedroom, they found him, still hiding in the closet. When they dragged him out, I felt sick. His greasy, unkempt hair stuck to his face. His clothes were filthy, but it was his eyes that got me, wide, unblinking, unfriendly. He never spoke, never explained why he was there, but the police did. They found hundreds of fake job listings linked to his name. He had been collecting people's personal information from their resumes, learning their schedules, finding out when they'd leave their homes. That night, while I was at the interview, he was already inside my house. He had been waiting, watching. He had been in my home for hours before I even went to bed. The worst part? Even after his arrest, I'd never found out what he planned to do. And I don't think I ever want to know. Story 3 by Anonymous. The Man in the Rain. I live in the middle of nowhere. Flat, barren farmland stretches for miles in every direction. The nearest town is a 20-minute drive, and even calling it a town is generous. There's a main highway not too far off, but beyond that, It's just dirt roads, gravel paths, and empty space. I'm 44 and retired, so my days are slow, predictable. That day was no different. It had been raining for a week straight. Endless gray skies, cold sheets of water hitting the earth, the kind of rain that turns dirt to sucking mud. I spent most of the day inside, going through my routine. Around noon, I stepped onto my front porch for a smoke, listening to the steady rhythm of raindrops against the roof. The air smelled of wet soil and distant thunder. Then I saw him. Far off, coming down the long dirt road that led to my house. A motorcycle, its tires kicking up mud and water as it cut through the downpour. The rain made it hard to see clearly, but the bike looked like an ADV or dirt bike, built for rough terrain. No one ever comes down this road. No one should. I figured it was a mistake, some lost rider who had taken the wrong turn. But he kept coming, closer. The rider finally stopped right by my garage. He just sat there, engine idling, his helmeted head tilted toward my house, watching. Then he saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The rain poured between us. Then, without a word, he turned the bike around and rode back the way he came. I watched until he disappeared over the horizon. The return. The rest of the day was uneventful. I made coffee, called my brother, took a nap. I had almost forgotten about the man on the bike. Then, around 8:00 p.m., the rain changed. What had been a steady drizzle turned into a full-on storm. Thunder, lightning, the kind of downpour that drowns out all other sounds. The wind howled, rattling the windows. That's when I heard it. The low, heavy rumble of an engine. It was faint at first, just barely audible through the storm. But as it got closer, I recognized it. The same dirt bike as before. I went to the front window. A single headlight cut through the rain and fog. He was coming back. This time, something was different. As he neared my house, he killed the light. Instantly, he disappeared into the dark. My gut clenched. Where the hell did he go? I waited, listened. Minutes passed. Nothing. I moved from window to window, checking every angle of my property. But the rain had swallowed everything. No movement, no sound. Then, footsteps. Muddy, squelching footsteps right outside my house. They circled the property. Slow, deliberate. Whenever I moved to a window, they stopped. When I backed away, they started again. Someone was toying with me. I wasn't about to wait and find out why. The confrontation? I went to my bedroom, grabbed my shotgun, and moved toward the garage. I didn't know if this guy was lost, crazy, or something worse. But I wasn't about to take chances. I got in my truck, started the engine, and threw the garage door open. The second I pulled out, I hit the high beams. Light flooded my property. And that's when I saw him. A man, standing outside one of my windows. Dressed in all black, holding a hammer. For a moment, he was frozen in place, caught in the glow of my lights. Then he ran. I watched as he sprinted toward the back of the house, vanishing into the darkness. A few seconds later, I heard the dirt bike roar to life. By the time I reached the back window, he was already gone. The aftermath. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove into town and went straight to the sheriff's office. I told them everything. They didn't have much to say. No license plate, no real description, just a man in the rain. I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I do know this. He wasn't lost. He wasn't mistaken. He came back for a reason. And that hammer in his hand? I don't think he planned to use it on my windows.